think they're meant to be on behalf.
Senator Ludlam.
Carry on. All right, thanks. I was going to pick up where Senator Sterle left off. Could you maybe confirm for us the current figure of your understanding of the total federal funding for the Perth Freight Link project?
Sorry, Senator, was that to myself or to Mr Davis?
Whoever's happy to pick it up.
Yeah.
Whoever's got the most accurate information in front of them.
I'll just get Mr Pittard to give you that answer, Senator.
Thank you.
The Australian Government commitment to Perth Freight Link is $1.185 billion.
Okay. That hasn't changed since last time we were here, has it?
No, Senator, it hasn't changed.
Okay, is the Commonwealth funding broken up by stages of the project? The number I've got in front of me is the Commonwealth contribution for the tunnel is 261 million. Does that sound accurate?
The Australian Government's commitment is to the project as a whole, so sections 1 and 2.
Okay. So you don't make a distinction internally about which stage it
We
goes
don't
to?
internally, Senator. The figure you quoted is the additional funding that was provided by the Australian Government in April of last year.
The 261 figure?
Correct.
That was top up, okay. Can you confirm the current benefit cost ratio for the Perth Freight Link and when that number was established?
The figure, I just check that I've got that. I might have to take the benefit cost information on notice. That was part of the business case that was assessed by Infrastructure Australia,
yeah,
and is part of that assessment report from IA, Senator. I don't think I've got
I
that at
suspect
my
you've got the
fingertips.
number somewhere in your notes. I know that it's a bit of an arbitrary thing
I
to
might
throw
just
at you
have to
first
take
thing in the
that
morning.
on notice and come back to you with that.
Yeah, if you can find that while we're chatting or sort of during the course of the morning, that would be great. So that was done for the business case. So you've answered my next question. Is the BCR, whatever the final ratio that the assessors arrived at, is it based on the freight link actually reaching the port of Fremantle?
The benefit cost is based on the project as it's currently configured for sections 1 and 2.
Yeah, but it's not strictly accurate because the way it's currently configured is actually very different to how it was announced. Originally it was a surface road and now it's a tunnel. So has the BCR been redone or recalculated since the state government confirmed that it would be a tunnel for stage 2?
The benefit cost hasn't been recalculated on the basis of the latest figure.
Well then, colour me confused, because it was done in the business case before there was a commitment to do stage 2 underground. So I feel like we'd better iron this out now. Back when it was done, it was a surface road, and the number added up to whatever it was. We'll try and nail down whatever it was during the morning. Originally it was 5.2 to 1, so if you've got any updates on that. Since then, there's been a commitment by the state government, after a bit of confusion and back and forth, to drive the second leg underground from Stock Road, which is significantly higher cost than keeping the route on the surface. Surely that must change the benefit cost ratio, or at least would change the cost side of it.
Senator, I might need to take that on notice as well. I believe there have been, as I think about it,
that the principle is correct. If the cost of the project goes up, the cost side of the benefit cost ratio must also go up.
I believe the benefits have also gone up. I just don't have those figures at my fingertips.
I might just see,
Yeah,
Senator, if we could assist Mr Parkinson from Infrastructure Australia, may have that data for you.
Senator, when we reviewed the business case in May 2015, the benefit cost ratio for the project as then proposed was 2.5.
2.5.
As I indicated to Senator Sterle, we've since received a draft for the proposed tunnel option.
Yeah.
Neither the costings nor the benefits attributable to that proposal have been finalised, so we can't give you additional details on that at this stage.
But it's being redone.
We went back to the West Australian Government in June last year and we've not had a response as yet for their own reasons.
Back in June, they still had no idea what they wanted to do. This is a much more recent decision. So, but it's fair to say that the BCR's been recalculated.
That's correct.
That's not controversial. So are you currently undertaking an assessment process for the tunnel under Beaconsfield and Whitegum Valley?
As I indicated, Senator, we've asked a number of questions of the West Australian Government.
So that sounds like assessment to me.
We'd say that's in progress, but we haven't been formally given a final of that proposal.
Okay. I can throw this to the Enviro people in the committee room next door if you like, but has any environmental assessment been conducted into that you're aware of?
Senator, I think your questions there are more appropriately addressed to that.
But you wouldn't know if such an assessment was underway, I presume?
We see what's in the newspaper.
Okay.
I think, Senator, the environmental assessment, following the announcement in January by the West Australian Government of their revised proposal, that environmental assessment will now be undertaken as part of the contractor who's been engaged for the process.
All right. Now, what I've been asked to bring back to WA, and presumably Senator Sterl's been asked this as well, is where the extractor pipes taking the diesel and other airborne pollutants out of the tunnel are going to be placed, because if I was living in the neighbourhood of one of those things, I'd want to know. So do you have any information you can share with us about who's going to be breathing this stuff in and where those things will be located?
Senator, my understanding is, following the announcement of the Premier, that work will now be undertaken as part of the design and the environmental impact assessment process.
So they don't know yet?
We don't have any details at this stage of location of extractors and exhaust stacks.
So they don't know and you don't know. So documents obtained by Ms Alana McTiernan in February revealed that the tunnel could cost somewhere between $5 and $8.5 billion. What does that do to your benefit cost analysis, if the costs are that high?
Senator, those figures that you quote were figures from early 2014. They were indicative strategic estimates well before the business case was undertaken, right. Well before more robust estimates were undertaken, well before any initial or more developed procurement was undertaken. So no confidence can be placed now in those estimates given the further development work that's been undertaken.
You've managed to cut the costs by 3/4 or so?
I beg your pardon?
They've managed to cut the costs by 3/4 or so to get it back within the original funding envelope, or is there a blowout? You're not able to...
There's no blowout. The normal process as a project matures and as you move through the development phase and into the procurement phase and test prices in the market is that you get much more refined pricing, which is what we're seeing now with the estimates that we're now talking about, the $1.9 billion overall project cost.
The information that I've got is that 30% of all freight trucks won't be permitted in the Row 9 tunnel. So anything that's permitted, any dangerous loads and also livestock trucks. Is that consistent with your information? A third of freight vehicles won't actually be allowed in the tunnel?
Senator, that's a matter for main roads and regulatory agencies to undertake. Our understanding is that the design of the tunnel will be in such a way that those sorts of loads could be accommodated, but that's all again part of the final design characteristics of the project.
But the government's already committed to building this thing. How come so much of this information is still shrouded in secrecy? Like, the taxpayer funds have been committed and yet the thing hasn't been designed, and you're not able to confirm something as simple as the kind of traffic that's going to be allowed in there.
The nature of the project, as the detailed design and community consultation is undertaken, will provide a means whereby that information will become more widely disseminated as that consultation can occur.
Well, I would like to take that comment on face value, but of course, there's no diesel particulate modelling been released to date on stage 1, let alone stage 2 of the project. Surrounding residents aren't able to get accurate information about the diesel fallout from the road that's already under construction. So why should we be confident there's suddenly going to be this revelation of transparency for stage 2?
Well, Senator, our understanding is that those sorts of issues, which are matters for the state to address.
Not while you guys are writing the cheques out, sorry, with respect. You're bankrolling it. The project wouldn't be happening without Commonwealth support, so it doesn't seem entirely appropriate to just shove anything inconvenient back at the state government. You would be able to presumably put conditions of transparency and disclosure on the state government if you chose to.
The relative responsibilities for Commonwealth and state environmental requirements clearly put responsibilities on the state for matters such as, you know, the ones that you mentioned,
People
to
living
be
under
monitored by the state,
particulates.
and the Commonwealth responsibilities for environmental requirements are also clearly spelled out, so that each plays their responsibilities, Senator.
Sorry if some of my comments seem a bit sharp, but we're in the midst of an enormous debacle at the moment on stage 1. So we're trying to, I mean, to be perfectly frank with you, make sure that the project is stopped in 2 weeks' time. But if it does go ahead, we've got a responsibility for the health and well-being of residents, and the way stage 1 is played out doesn't give us any confidence.
We try as hard as we can in this committee not to editorialise.
Sometimes it's
Well, no, but you have a great opportunity
Difficult.
here through your questions
I'm
draw out the information that allow people to form their view. But
I'm doing my best.
we don't. You're sitting at the wrong table to give opinions.
I'm asking, there's just not a lot of information coming back. Are projects that IA funds dependent on compliance with environmental approvals during construction?
So, Senator, as part of the business case, we take into account the environmental impacts of the project, and they're costed as part of the business case that we assess.
Okay. And what happens if the performance of the contractors and Main Roads Department vary from what's written on paper?
So that'd be something for those delivering the project and the authorities in Western Australia to
But it wouldn't put
monitor
the funding
through
at risk.
delivery.
For example, if evidence came to light of a series, dozens and dozens and dozens of breaches of environmental conditions, state and federal, would that put funding at risk from the Commonwealth, or would you just let that go under the radar?
Again, Senator, that would be a question of the extent to which any conditions were in fact being breached.
Right.
They would need to be that would need to be established by the regulatory agencies, and the appropriate response to any established breaches would need to be taken by those regulatory agencies, Senator.
But not you guys. The money will keep flowing unless somebody else puts up a red flag somewhere.
Well, we would need to understand what conditions were being broken and the like. The regime for monitoring and enforcement sits with, in the case of the state, the Environmental Protection Agency,
Yeah.
and with the Commonwealth Department of Environment for Commonwealth environmental requirements under the legislation.
That's my understanding as well. That regime has completely broken down from my point of view. So has anybody at the table been notified either by the OEPA and WA or their Commonwealth counterparts about breaches of environmental conditions? Is that word getting through to your officers or not?
We are aware of claims to that effect, Senator.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that those claims are being investigated in the case of the state by the State Environmental Protection Agency, and in the case of the Commonwealth, by the Commonwealth Department of Environment are considering those matters. They are the rightful agencies to be considering those matters, not ourselves.
I understand that distinction. It's more, yeah, I understand that. And that awareness that you say you have of those claims, is that because you've heard in the media, myself or Senator Stirl or Ms McTiernan, banging on about it, or are there interdepartmental communications taking place that have made you aware that there's potential significant breaches?
We are aware of them because of reports. We are aware of them because we have contact with other agencies.
Okay, so both.
Both.
Both. Okay, thanks. What dollar figure, maybe Mr Davies to you, since you brought it up before, what dollar figure did you place on the environmental costs and benefits when the original assessment was being done? How do you value something like clean air, clean water, biodiversity, endangered species? How do you put a dollar figure on those?
So those are things that are examined as part of developing the business case in terms of the mitigation of the impact.
Yep.
I don't have those figures at hand for this particular project. but
Could you provide those for us, please?
We can see what's in the.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. So, for example, one of the benefits that the state government has expressed is that free-flowing traffic, rather than stuff that's doing stop-start, is lower atmospheric emissions. So I've certainly heard that claim before. I've also heard that the project will wipe out half of the endangered carnabes and red-tailed cockatoos in that area of the Swan Coastal Plain. And I'm just wondering how you balance those up. If they all end up as a 2.5 to $1 figure, how you have relatively weighed those things up. Is that something you could provide for us?
Again, that'd be part of the detail of the business case that we looked at.
Okay. That was a yes, though, that you'd undertake to provide the breakdown?
Yeah, we'll see what's in the business case, Senator.
I presume there's a reason that the business case has been kept secret all this time. I don't suppose you're in a position to provide that for us at this time, are you?
That's a confidential business case from the Western Australian government.
So I understand. So I just want to, this is the last bracket from me, and thank you for your patience, Chair. So IA policy, and let me know if this is still the case, as it was last time I checked, is that WA won't receive funding for the PFL until you've got PPRs in hand for stage 1 and 2. Is that still the case?
That remains the case, Senator,
Yep.
yes.
That's not in law anywhere, is it? That's just sensible policy that...
That's the Commonwealth's policy position in relation to the project, that the funding is tied to both stages.
Yeah.
Proceeding.
And by saying tied to both stages, you mean you have the PPR for stage 1 and 2 in hand and you're happy with the details that you've received before the disbursements are made to the state?
That's correct.
That's right. That's consistent with what I was told last time. Oh, I think maybe the last 2 times. So, in September 2016, a letter from Minister Paul Fletcher to the former WA Transport Minister, Mr Nowder, confirmed that Commonwealth funding for the PFL wouldn't be forthcoming unless the whole project was undertaken, which sort of made sense at the time. You weren't proposing to fund half the project when they didn't know where it was going. Is funding still dependent on you having completed and assessed the PPRs for stage 1 and 2?
Yes, Senator.
It is? Okay. And can you confirm that WA will not receive or has not received any funds until you've received an acceptable PPR for stage 2?
That's correct, Senator. We are yet to receive any such documentation and no funding has been provided to date.
I haven't been kind of behind the scenes in these processes before. Are there drafts that are handed back and forward, or do you just wait until a completed proposal is put to you?
I'll get Mr Pittard to give you an understanding, but essentially what happens is jurisdictions will talk to us about what is likely to be in their PPR. Clearly, we have requirements which we set out in documentation to them. Sometimes they will provide us with working drafts or the like. I don't know if that's the case in this situation as yet. Mr Pittard may be able to give you a more up-to-date answer.
Mr Murdoch has outlined it well, Senator.
Yeah.
So we would expect in the normal course of events for more complex projects to get a draft PPR to assist a jurisdiction in finalising a PPR project proposal report to get it through the approval process.
Okay. I would assume that this would meet the threshold of complexity that such a draft would be forwarded to you folks. Has that happened yet, or are you expecting that to happen?
I don't believe we have a draft project proposal report.
Is there any circumstance under which you would provide funding for the Freight Link without a PPR for stage 2?
I don't envisage a situation, Senator.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. Have you seen a PPR for stage 3? or any hint that such a thing exists, keeping in mind that this road stops 2.5 kilometres short of the port that it's meant to serve?
Just to clarify, Senator, I assume you mean by stage 3 the section of road, an upgrade between the end of the current project and
the port.
into Fremantle Port.
Yep, where the freight is going. Yep.
We have not seen a draft project proposal report for that.
Okay. I understand that one of the reasons that the costings that Ms McTiernan got a hold of was so high was that some of the scoping was implying that the tunnel would actually carry on under the river and wouldn't resurface till it got to North Freo. Do you have any inkling of how the proponent intends to get the Perth Freight Link to the Perth Freight Terminal in Fremantle Harbour?
The proponent is being asked to consider Perth Freight Link as it's currently configured, which is section 1 and 2.
Yeah. And how does that square with your commitment, which I think is a wise one, not to fund the project until you had a complete freight route? Because you don't have one at the moment. And we've had this back and forth and this run-in on at least 2 occasions that I can remember. Sorry if I'm predictable. You don't have a Perth Freight Link yet. You've got a freight link that goes to the wrong side of the river. How does it square with the government's commitment to not disperse funds until the route is complete?
Senator, I'm sure you know what I'm going to say, but sections 1 and 2 constitute the Perth Freight Link as envisaged, as it was assessed by IA and as contemplated in terms of the Perth Freight Link solution that the federal government has committed its funding to, and around which funding would be provided once tangible progress was made on section 2.
Do you understand why this is being subjected to a certain amount of mockery in the West, that folks on this side of the country are proposing to blow this much money on a road that, when it gets to Stirling Bridge, is going to hit 2 or 3 sets of traffic lights and cause extraordinary traffic pile-ups? You don't have a freight link yet. You've got 2/3 of one.
As I have mentioned previously, with some further relatively minor civil works around the Canning-Stirling Highway, adequate levels of service are expected to be provided until the mid-2020s.
This is nonsense. This is just, you shouldn't embarrass yourself, Mr Pitt.
Sanders Stewart.
Especially with us West Aussies that travel that road each weekend we're home. I'm sorry, Chair. It's a silly thing to say.
The witness is
No, I know, he's trying to
Oh, no,
protect
the witness is
a
providing
flawed project. and I
the
get
statements as accurately as he can, and he shouldn't be subject to that.
Last one from me. Have you visited the area? Sorry, this is my second last one. Have you visited the intersection in question? And apologies for the frustration that's evident in our voices. I live in North Fremantle. Yeah, it's absurd to imagine that these heavy upgrades would be necessary for the rest of the route, and for that last choke point in North Fremantle at that bottleneck, you can just, I don't know, sequence the traffic lights in a smarter way and the traffic will disappear. Like, I'm not a transport planner, but we can all see where this is going. How high does the toll need to be in place for the cost-benefit ratio to stack up? And can you give us any information as to what charges are going to be for the truckies who are going to be forced to use this road?
Senator, I can't recall what was contained in the modelling for the summary business case that was released. I don't have that detail in front of me. What rate is ultimately charged will be a matter for the government further down the track. Various scenarios were used to look at what rates of return there might be.
How can you possibly conduct a cost-benefit analysis of a toll road without knowing what the toll is going to be?
Sensitivity analyses were done. I can't remember as I'm sitting here what those rates were.
What year do you expect this freight link to actually reach the port?
The current project is due to be completed again, depending on the final proponent's design, and I'm talking about sections 1 and 2, sometime in the early 2020s.
In the early 2020s, that's 1 and 2. In what year do you anticipate stage 3 will be given some serious thought and the freight link will actually reach the port?
Senator, I can't speculate on that at the moment. As it stands at the moment, no funding has been committed to a final link into the port. The minor civil works are part of the current project.
I'm sorry to labour the point. Tell us what these minor civil works are. As a North Freo resident, I guess I should just declare an interest at this point, but what minor civil works do you have in mind that will prevent just basically a standing 2-lane traffic jam for those 2.5 kilometres?
My understanding is that they involve things like priority changes to traffic lights, changes to right turning priorities at intersections there, traffic island changes and that sort of thing, Senator. I can't be more specific
If
than
that's
that.
good enough for that bottleneck, why not just do that for the rest of the Stock Road Leach Highway alignment? Why are we doing this heavy duty upgrading of Stock Road and Leach Highway, which involves a lot more than traffic light sequencing, and yet somehow imagining that the last 2.5 kilometres you'll be right just with some traffic light switching? Sorry,
The rest of the project is
slow.
removing something in the order of 14 sets of traffic lights.
And what's going to happen to these vehicles when they get to North Freo?
And seeking to improve flows generally over that link.
They'll be
And the
flowing
project
until
and the
they get to
project has
North
been assessed.
Fremantle, and then they're going to stop.
Well, listen, if you...
Senator O'Sullivan, can you see where this is going?
Look, I hear your frustration, but let's keep our questions factual. Let the officer answer, and then the world can form their own view. They don't need your view, my view, or Senator Rice's view. Just keep your questions factual. Ask them how long, how much, how wide, how fat, how skinny. Let people draw their own inference.
How vague?
How vague?
How
I don't mean to disturb your line of questions.
No,
Senator Love,
I'm
but
done, Chair. I can't
I'm just-
think of any different ways to ask the same question. So
all right.
I'm done.
So thank you.